Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to the Supply Chain Dialogues podcast, where we will be diving into the procurement, supply chain, and operations management world. We got insights for you into new, old, and even outdated truths, and hopefully that will make you more successful in your job by expanding your knowledge of solutions which are out there. My name is Daniel Helmig, your host for the show. I ran supply chains, procurements, and operations globally in 5 industries for more years than I care to remember.
And I'm Amy, the AI-generated co-host voice of the show. I will ask the questions and provide from time to time facts and figures provided from my other AI siblings.
Thank you, Amy, and let's dive into the show. This episode is called Aligning Corporate Organizational Design to Company Culture and Markets. Since listeners like the mini-series approach we've used in the past, we keep on going and hope that you will like this. So, this is about organizational design, and it is divided into 3 parts. In the first part, the part that you're now listening to, we talk about what it takes to stop the constant corporate reorganizations and focus on customers and markets by getting the corporate headquarters design right. In part 2, we then will talk about aligning functional design to the overall design of the company, and we will use the function procurement as an example. And the last part will then go on into roles and responsibilities, competencies and job design, or in other words, the division of labor, which is, believe it or not a natural business law. And in most companies, it's too loosely defined. So we start at part 1, the headquarter. If you think back, when was your last restructuring in your organization, and what kind of structure did you adopt? Was it matrix, global, central, decentral, regional, or glocal, whatever that means? And is the last restructuring complementing the one before, or 180 degrees different? And let's think about it from specific perspectives. So when you work in a division or business unit or region, how do you evaluate the performance of those in headquarters? Are they great? Are they so la-la? Or are they completely abysmal? And if you're in headquarters, from your perspective, do you believe that the regions and divisions perform well? Should each region or division have its own finance, R&D, HR, procurement, sales, tax, treasury, real estate departments? Or should they all be centralized and provide services to all entities? And let's talk about the royals, the customers. Who owns the customer relationship? Is it the country, the business unit, the division, corporate, region, or sales as a function? As a corporate buyer or customer, it's the same thing, it is easy to identify companies that have not done their organizational design homework. You just have to look at a bit more formal meeting with a company and then count the number of people sitting opposite you at the table. If there are regional, country, corporate, functional representatives in addition to the sales lead that you normally work with, you will leave the meeting with a stack of business cards, but you are none the wiser, since none of them likes to step on each other's toes in that meeting. And they're normally not prepared for the meeting anyway, since all came together only in the breakfast room of the hotel or had a powwow in front of the elevator before coming up into your meeting room. What a waste of good resources. Numerous management and strategy books as well as academic articles have been published on the subject of designing companies effectively. Many of them offer actually valuable insights. The significance of this topic is underscored by frequent large-scale reorganizations and downsizing efforts pursued by management teams seeking to establish an optimal structure for enhanced competitiveness. Over the last 10 years, large companies such as Coca-Cola, Siemens, ABB, Honeywell, Kraft, GE, and BASF have undergone changes in their center versus business or regional-led structures. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. In this podcast, we will concentrate on the in my and most scholars' view, the most relevant factors for organizational design, namely the corporate headquarters, or CHQs. They are typically the crucial element of any reorganization, often act as the hub for organizational change as such. Our argument is that the need for subsequent reorganization can be minimized by getting the headquarter design right, which involves determining the internal and external relationships, roles and responsibilities, and a few other factors. So let's analyze a little bit deeper. Achieving the optimal allocation of tasks between corporate headquarters and country subsidiaries, divisional or functional structures is challenging, no doubt about that. It requires balancing global efficiency and dynamic arbitrage with the flexibility to adapt to local market demands. Several studies have offered recommendation on headquarter design which aim to balance centralization and decentralization. These studies highlight how the relationship between the CHQ and its subsidiaries depends on the company's international strategy and the underlying nature of resources that define its competitive advantage. Moreover, many of these studies suggest that certain so-called mandatory functions, such as general management, the CEO, CFO, and so on, legal, financial reporting and control, treasury and taxation, are better suited for a headquarter. However, determining the appropriate placement for the remaining, in this case discretionary functions, which means all operational functions, is not as straightforward. Just look at your own company, which of functions that I did not count up at the beginning are in the headquarter and work there as corporate staff. Once the design stage is complete, and you know in which direction you want to go with your organization, transition to the execution phase requires sensitivity and discipline from company leaders. Sensitivity is required towards individuals who have performed excellently in the current setup. At the same time, discipline is necessary to maintain course and not succumb to individual or subgroup pressures during the change process, and there are many. Implementing a significant change in the headquarter model also necessitates discovering the governance structure. Additionally, it is not uncommon for 10 to 20% of the company's leadership to resist change, which you can say euphemistically presents an opportunity to refresh the competence level of the organization. In other words, well, guys, if you don't want to be on the boat, you have to get off the boat. Part 3 of the mini-series will delve deeper into this topic. According to many studies, and as well my own experience being subject or object of organizational redesign many times, you have a good chance to get a successful corporate design going when a couple of points have been done before. Now, corporate headquarter design is no cookie-cutter exercise. I give you a quick health warning right now. We go a little bit academic since the topic of organizational design is so rich with scholarly and often brilliant studies. The study, The Size, Structure and Performance of Corporate Headquarters from 2003 from D.J. Collins, D. Young and M. Gold, building on more analysis than going back into the 90s, is in this context, I cannot say it differently, awe-inspiring.
The authors analyzed over 600 corporations about corporate headquarters design in Europe, the USA, Japan, and Chile. When defining the size and responsibilities of corporate headquarters, the following hypotheses were proven in their research. Here is a selection from the over 20 hypotheses the study proved. Larger companies will have proportionately smaller headquarters than smaller corporations. The size of corporate headquarters will vary with the industry sector. Firms whose operations have broader geographic scope will have larger corporate headquarters. For a given size and diversity of firms, those with more organizational layers above the businesses will have smaller corporate headquarters. Privately owned companies will have smaller corporate headquarters than publicly quoted companies. Government-owned companies will have larger corporate headquarters. Regulated public companies will have larger corporate headquarters. The size of corporate headquarters differs from country to country. The determinants of headquarters size are the same for all countries. Greater profitability will lead to larger headquarters. Additionally, there is enough evidence from other studies and real-life experience to suggest that changes to the organizational design are needed depending on where a firm is in the corporate life cycle.
With this knowledge in our backpacks, as usual, we do not just marvel at the complexity of a topic, but as well see whether we can identify a gap and use this as an opportunity to close it. Let's start by identifying where your company is on the spectrum of corporate headquarter design and whether a gap reveals itself when you review the following statements.
You do not have long-term significant performance differences inside the organizational dimensions as in regions, functions, or businesses.
Is there any business or region that does well most of the time in your company? Do the respective managers have a bit of freedom from the rest of the organization, meaning that they are a bit more equal than everyone else? Are they spending then 20 and 30% of their time to share lessons learned, tips and tricks with everyone else so that the whole organization gets better? I bet not. Or is everyone working with each other, sharing best practices and coming together as equals, pointing out the good, the bad and the ugly, and in the evening have tea or a beer together, since the company has a good dialogue culture where you can openly talk about gaps and opportunities? Sounds like corporate nirvana? It definitely is. And who creates such a culture? The leadership, the board of directors, the CEO.
Roles and responsibilities of each large organizational dimension are clearly defined and documented for everyone to see.
What roles and responsibility construct does your company use, if any? Let's do a short overview. There are several other types of roles and responsibility structures that are used in project management and organizational management. Here are a few examples. Maybe you recognize one that is used in your company. Well, first there is RACI, R-A-C-I. It is the prevailing definition structure for responsible, accountable, contribute, or consult, and inform. Another one is PARIS. This stands for participate, approve, recommend, inform, and support. Then there is DAISY. This stands for driver, approver, contributor, and informed. Then we have RAPID. This stands for recommend, agree, perform, input, and decide. And then we have LACY. This stands for leader, accountable, consulted, and engaged. Then we have PERT, which is program execution and review technique. And then we have finally, which I really like because it sounds cool, the Vroom Jeton Jago decision model. This helps identify the appropriate level of participation for team members based on the type of decision being made and the level of support needed by stakeholders. And then there is fuzzy logic, which exists probably in most companies, at least from a certain size, where the leadership has not figured out that division of labor is not God-given, but needs to be defined and designed in every company, like with one of the models that I just walked through. Just leaving it up to the employees to figure it out is sloppy leadership. The managers should rather run a dog kennel than a company.
Directions from corporate headquarters are executed swiftly in each operation.
Ever seen a corporate decree that is implemented with delay or not at all? Ever wondered whether the people in headquarters have any idea of what's going on in your business or region? And while you fighting the good fight, they send you superfluous directions? Ever got frustrated in headquarters when after 2 years of planning by involving, you thought everyone, you finally roll out the needed change in the company and the implementation takes ages? If these things happen regularly in your company, you need to tighten up. Whatever headquarters you have, centralized with many discretionary functions amassed in the center, or a fairly small setup, if the head of an organization is declaring things that need to be changed, they need to function. If the regions and divisions fear that the headquarters is not in sync with markets, customers, products, this needs to be discussed and changed. And there is, believe it or not, a construct for this. It is called management board. So if in the management board you have an open dialogue culture and people with a spine, unruly headquarters can be reined in. How to operationalize this will be discussed in other parts of the mini-series.
The record-to-report process runs smoothly, and surprises seldom impact the market's perception.
Markets and investors expect stable corporate performance. What you say should happen. Surprises are the stuff that keeps share price down, worries banks, and overall throws up questions in the ability of the leadership team to run the company. If regions or business units regularly deviate from their forecasts, claim all sorts of reasons, and surprises hit just day before the end of a reporting cycle, Marcellus in Hamlet would say correctly, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. What is needed is consequence management and a process review. And process mining works normally good in this way, and run through the complete sales and operations reporting. And no politics, just numbers.
There are only infrequent issues in the supply chain, marketing and sales, and service in your businesses and/or regions.
Whatever organization model is chosen, in the end, it has to lead to well-functioning operations in the interest of the customer and the bottom line. If issues occur in abundance, the organizational design, including roles and responsibilities, is not aligned. What is not needed is a blame culture, but rather a game culture where parts of functions, regions, or business units strive to be the best while learning from each other. This does not come naturally. It takes great leadership to set it up.
New acquisitions are integrated in 12 to 18 months and perform at the same or better levels than before the takeover.
If you have a good organizational setup that drives innovation, creativity, and keeps delivering over and over again, consistently, you will create cash from your operations that you can be used to buy other companies that make you stronger and your balance sheet even more impressive. But often, companies that buy other companies are just in awe with this jewel that they have taken in, that they let this jewel continue to operate in their own specific way. This means that besides the financial reporting, which needs to be aligned to ensure compliance with regulators, everything else stays like a time capsule preserved from the moment the acquisition took place. I've seen many of these acquisitions and mergers, and nearly all of them failed to meet the expectations and synergies defined at the get-go. What is most amazing is that often these do-not-touch periods have been agreed upon as part of the negotiations with the other company's leadership. Often after these periods, the former leaders then as well leave the new construct, always with a very healthy padding in their wallets. So in other words, they could work in the way that they have set up their organization, although it has been bought by another company. Unless you have a very laissez-faire or hands-off organizational construct, this interim period before absorption into your company is a folly. Be proud of your company's structure and processes, and ensure that the new cousins learn to operate as quickly as possible in the new setup. At the end, you were more successful with your construct and bought them, not the other way around. Leaving acquisitions too long in limbo causes havoc in all processes and departments in your company. If a target for acquisition insists of being ring-fenced in terms of their processes, in my mind there are only two alternatives. Either you walk on, or they walk out after the acquisition. No touchy-feely when it comes to corporate mergers or acquisitions. Clear swim lanes, clear rules, clear responsibilities from the beginning, and then focus on what matters most, that the new markets and the new customers feel that it's going the right direction.
There is little to no animosity between headquarters staff and business or regional head offices.
Well, what can I say? The relationship between headquarters and the business and regions reminds me of the old Pink Floyd song, Us and Them. But this does not need to be the case. No duplication in departments, clear roles and responsibilities, and you can play like an NBA basketball or championship soccer team. Everyone knows their strengths, their weaknesses, and their position on the field.
Senior management positions in corporate headquarters are filled with personnel from regions and businesses. There is a regular rotation on lower hierarchy levels.
You can't judge a person until you've walked a mile in their shoes. I've worked on both sides of headquarters, in regions, divisions, and on the corporate side. Everywhere are bright and motivated people working to do the best for the company.
Joel R. DeLuca, a longtime professor in Wharton School of Business, experienced this in his early years when he was working for NASA space program, both as an intern in the engineering department and later for their top leadership. Both sides meant well, but did not get the other side. De Luca in his book Politically Savvy argued that this savviness is defined as the ability to navigate and influence complex political environments effectively is a critical competency for leaders at all levels. He identifies 4 key components of political savvy: networking, understanding organizational culture, building alliances, and managing conflict.
To foster this networking and understanding of each other, leaders have to walk a few miles in the other colleagues' boots. That means that rotations in and out of headquarter functions, regions, and divisions are needed to build a company where people appreciate the work of their colleagues in other regions or areas and know how to use it for the benefit of the customer and the company. All right, if you answered yes to most statements, fantastic. You have your corporate headquarter design under control. Congratulations, well done. Do not listen further in. Better to focus on other topics like learning to code, hike, bake, or listen to another podcast. But please come back the next time to our supply chain dialogue. I'm sure we will find a gap that you can explore at that point in time as well. So you're still there? Great. I assume you could not subscribe to all the statements that Amy went through. Good. You have a great opportunity for value creation. A value-enhancing corporate headquarters strategic design and effective operation has wide-ranging implications for all company areas. The degree of centralization or decentralization can have significant and far-reaching impacts on cost, speed, and revenue. Customer and market-focused approach with a well-designed value chain that supports the efficient delivery of goods and services is critical. Determining the potential benefits of this new direction requires a thorough analysis of the current state, as we talked about before, including financial data and input from all stakeholders across the corporate ecosystem. Yep, it's a lot of work. Such an analysis is necessary to understand the organization's perception and identity to make then the improvement opportunities comprehensive. Now to the 2+1 design opportunities and their prizes.
Decentralizing a large corporate headquarter can create an opportunity for 5 to 10% overall headcount reallocation, shifting 90% of costs and tasks from the center to regions or businesses. This can optimize former cost allocations by up to 50% within 18 to 24 months. On the other hand, centralizing resources, either at the corporate, regional, or business headquarters level, can have a larger headcount reallocation impact, requiring investments in IT, process, and real estate infrastructure. Such an initiative can help to reallocate up to 30% of resource cost locally over a 2 to 3 year period.
The third form of change is data-driven organizational design, which involves identifying issues with how the organization is run instead of its design. This can be achieved by leveraging software tools to lean out processes, reduce waste, increase the span of control, and delayer hierarchies. The result is high transparency, making it easy to comprehend for decision-making. Typically, 10 to 20% of people analyzed, particularly at the management level, can be reallocated to growth opportunities in the corporation. If you're interested in this, I recommend reading the book by Robert Morrison, Data-Driven Organizational Change. I put a link into the show notes. Please note here that I said reallocation, not reduction. This is what I believe the right focus. Evidence suggests that most employees can be successfully moved to other organizational roles. An internal trade fair of talent can be included in any reorganization project with clearly defined swim lanes aligned with worker representatives as required. This helps to retain well-educated people with actual company experience. If, however, the overall headcount number is uncompetitive in the market, other methods have to be necessary, and former employees should be supported via outplacement services to find new gainful employment. Remember, what is for you just a headcount number and a cost of sales position is for others the only salary that they have to feed their loved ones. I've seen how little these services cost in a larger scheme and how professional people are being supported to find new employment. It is part of restructuring costs, so just do it. So we spend all the time thinking about corporate headquarter redesign. Let's see what it takes to get it done. I talk from experience by having moved the company from a centralized to a decentralized structure in line with the culture. a company that is still very thriving today. So, we start always with a time plan. It takes about 18 months. Speed is important to maintain the momentum here. The board sponsor should be the CEO for the design and the COO and/or CFO for the execution stage. The supervisory board needs to be fully on board the whole time as well. Let's think about the blueprint. There are two aspects. There is the quantitative and the qualitative part. On the quantitative part, we have headcount, revenue, cost, understanding that in detail from the source. On the qualitative part, we need to look at the cultural aspects by listening to all parts of the organization. What works well, what does not. Let every function, region, business write down what they are all about, clearly in a structured format. Let them then present in a multi-day management board offsite. Review the results of the current state with the management board and the supervisory board. Use an external consultancy if needed, and have someone understand the theoretical piece of the organizational design and consider software like OrgView from the book that I mentioned beforehand to visualize your setup for easier decision making. When you look at the lead, who should lead this organization, you are interested in an experienced senior leader who knows all parts of the organization. He should have someone who has walked in other people's shoes for a few months. And I give you a little tip. Ensure that you take care of the person after the organizational change is done so that there is little or none of personal bias towards the solution by the person in charge. Now let's talk about the project setup. You need a small core team with representatives of all organizational dimensions, the broader team with leaders from everywhere, who provides design input and oversees the execution of direction in their responsibility. When in most other topics a weekly meeting is enough, this one requires daily core team meetings to take care of any issue immediately and agile. Then you need bi-weekly extended team communication meetings, monthly reporting on board level by project lead with clear output KPIs like current state definition done, design stages done, cost, headcount, governance changes, implementation status, and. When we look at sustaining the success after it has been done, integrate the core team in the lead dimensions, when it is centralization to the headquarters, when it is decentral into the business or regions. Governance performance needs to be traceable with metrics and audits. Deviation requires swift and relentless action. The people from the core team can help you with this. When we look at digitalization automation opportunities, you will probably find out during the current state that many of the systems that you use have gaps, sometimes gaps as large that you can fly Airbuses through. As part of the project, you need to fix the HR systems and calibrate them with the financial systems as such. Headcount is headcount, cost is cost, has to be everywhere the same. Best is to have APIs that actually connect both systems so that it is ironclad. And while you're at it as well, calibrate and fix the real estate systems. If done right, there is a lot of empty space that can be used better or sold. And I'm not talking about there's empty space because people need to leave the company. It is because you realize that overall HR, finance, and or real estate were tracking not effectively. The risk? When we look at the risk, I have to say it's high. The project is open heart surgery while running a marathon. All aspects from communication, change management to risk management need to be carefully planned and executed. The daily project meetings ensure quick response time to deal with reality, which is normally not the same as the plan, as we all know. Now, when we look at the cost of the project, restructuring costs depend on the size of the change. Return on invest is generally 2 years after the start of the project. So let's look at the watchouts. There are a couple. First, we need a continued alignment in the board during the transformation. Next, you have to watch out for smart but clearly counterproductive jockeying of board members to maintain the status quo of their entities. Careful as well about declaring victory after the organization has changed while the new governance processes are not yet embedded into the organization. Next is an elimination of organizational memory regarding processes that worked well for customers. Maintain those at all costs. And then, different than many other setups, let's do not over-communicate the change. It should go smoothly, while the customers and most employees should not be involved in the intricacies of the change process. They should just focus on the business and at some point in time know that there is a new structure in which they report to. But business goes on. Thank you for listening up to this point for the first part of the mini-series about organizational design. We talked about headquarter design mainly. Hope you will join us as well for part 2 when we talk about functional design.
A big thank you as well from me. Did you enjoy this podcast? Then sign up for the Close the Gap blog and the Supply Chain Dialogues podcast on our webpage, or listen in on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you are interested in having a dialogue about the above, receiving some advisory support on how to tackle the topic best in your firm, or just like an exploratory call with Daniel, contact us via the web form on our website or just give us a call.
Nothing more to say besides stay safe and be bold. Goodbye.